These are the objectives, these are the metrics, these are the targets for those metrics. There's no confusion, right? Okay, which leads us to the next thing, which is continuous test process improvement. This is the next best practice that I wanted to talk about. So here what we would do is we would have our internal and external test objectives. And we would say, okay, we've got these objectives, we've got metrics, we've got targets for them. We want to move that metric in a direction that we would consider good in terms of effectiveness or efficiency. Become more effective, more efficient, or both. So we would put a plan in place to do this, right? You look at the metric and you say, okay, I want to move the needle this way, and so I'm going to put this plan in place. So now when you start talking about process improvement plans, you're in the realm of standard total quality management, TQM techniques, right? Pareto analysis to identify the factors that are most influential, 5 whys techniques or Ishikawa diagrams to identify what are the things that underlie those factors, how do I get at the real root causes so that I can start to make some changes, scatter plots to look for demonstrable correlation between something that you think should change and what you're trying to affect. So that's fairly typical process improvement stuff. And now here's something that's a little bit unique when we're talking about test process improvement. We have to be conscious of the fact that some of the factors that are going to affect the test process are going to be outside of the test process, because testing is downstream of a lot of other stuff, right? So we want to identify those things, and we want to work collaboratively with the people who own those non-testing factors that are going to challenge our ability to improve our process. Because otherwise you could find yourself doing what economists refer to as pushing on a string, right? In other words, you're trying to move a variable that you don't really have control over. It's like pushing on the end of a string. You can push on one end of it, I mean the other end's going to move, right? But you got to find the guy who can grab the other end of the string and pull it to where you need it to go. And of course, since we have metrics, we want to be able to measure progress towards these goals and course correct, right? I mean, your initial plan is of course always subject to change and to adjustment. Okay, so let's again look at an example of this. Bug reject. Now, bugs, we report bugs, they get rejected sometimes. Now, this is going to happen. There's always going to be some amount of noise in the signal. And in fact, you want testers to err on the side of reporting more bugs rather than less. If a tester is going to make a mistake, if they have a doubt about whether something is or is not a bug, they should report it as a bug. Because the alternative is to take the risk that something escapes out into the field, right? But that said, we would want to keep the reject rate fairly low, because every rejected bug is waste to some extent, right? In a perfect world, every bug we report would be must fix and would be fixed. We would never report a bug that wasn't actually a bug, right? But that perfect world is not attainable. So, we want to allow for some amount of rejected bugs. And I usually put that at about a 5% rate. That's a tolerable rate of noise. But, in some organizations it gets above that. Now, one of the things that's very important, again, think about the non-test factors that can influence this. Yeah, it's true that the tester might be mistaken about the expected result. It's true that the test data might not be correct. It's true that the test case might be incorrect. Those are factors within our control. We want to understand to the extent that those are causing rejected bug reports, let's make those go away. But there are non-test challenges, like the requirement specification is vague, right? Or the requirement specification and the design specification are both completely specific, but they're contradictory, right? And we're like, well, which one is correct, right? So there can be a number of reasons, non-test related reasons, why we're filing more bug reports than we should, in the sense that we're filing ones that get rejected. And this is fine. It's important when you're thinking about process improvement is to remember you're talking about process improvement, not individual punishment, right? And I think that a lot of us tend to react sometimes defensively to metrics because we've been through a bad metrics program where it wasn't process improvement, it was individual punishment of, I'm going to figure out why people are screwing up and then negatively, incent them. What you're measuring when you're measuring a metric on a process is the process capability for the most part, not the individual's capability. So you look at this bug reject rate, you want to say, okay, this is telling me something about the overall software development process. Some of it is related to test, some of it is related to things outside of testing. But what I would want to do is look at what is that percentage of bug reports rejected, what are the factors that lead to bug reports being rejected, what are the most important factors there based on some sort of Pareto analysis of, I take a sample of 100 rejected bug reports, how many of those bugs were rejected because bad data, bad tester expectation, bad test environment configuration, bad requirements, conflicting requirements and design specifications, etc., right? And do that Pareto analysis and then say, okay, these are the things that are resulting in bug reject. I'll fix that, drive that down. Okay, so why is test process improvement a best practice in case it's not obvious? It is all about increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of your test activities, right? And how could we argue that that's not a good thing to do, right? I mean, we should try to be more effective. We should try to do things cheaper and faster, right? So that's kind of master of the obvious stuff there. It helps align testing with organizational priorities and the other project processes. So, if we're talking cross-functionally and saying, we're recognizing these non-test factors, we're recognizing test factors, we're going to work collaboratively to improve our processes, everything's going to fit better, because we start to think systemically about how the software development lifecycle works and what's attached to what, and how do we get things better aligned from beginning to end. And this will, of course, improve the real value of testing to the organization, where there's less friction, we're more effective, we're more efficient. It also improves the perceived value of testing to the organization. And this is kind of a strange thing at first, but really there's the potential value of testing to the organization, there's the actual value of testing to the organization, and there's a perceived value of testing to the organization. And ideally, those three things would be the same thing. That you'd be operating at your full potential, you'd be able to measure that, know what that potential was, and know why that was your full potential, and everybody would recognize that. But unfortunately, a lot of times there are gaps. Now, test process improvement is primarily about eliminating the gap between your potential performance and your actual performance, but it's also about sending a message to people that you're focused on getting better, which will better align your perceived capabilities with your actual capabilities. So I think that's a best practice as well. Okay, trained and certified test teams. So testing is a specialty skill area. It's if it ever was something that quote unquote anyone could do, it certainly isn't that way anymore. It's in addition to domain knowledge and technical knowledge, there's a lot of special testing skills that are out there and that people should try to pick up to be better testers. Now, when I say requiring training, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, well, that's very self-serving. RBCS is a training company. Of course you're going to say that. But I'm not talking just about instructor-led training here, and I'm not even talking about